Hello, and welcome to the Sugar Bell Review, a program dedicated to learning about the people, places, and policies that make up the Bellbrook Sugarcreek community. This evening, we have with us Amanda Brenner, the teen librarian over at Winter's Library, and somebody I've had the pleasure of working with in the past. So I am grateful that you were willing to join us on this little adventure here on the Sugar Bell tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, I have spoken to Joanne so far, and I have also spoken to Sue. Would you like to fill us in a little bit on how you ended up at Winter's Library before we go on to the library part of the interview?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So my entire life, I have always been a reader. You know, growing up, going to the library, my local library, which was in Belmont. The Belmont branch was my library growing up, and my mom would take us there on Saturdays. My brothers and I would come home with stacks of books, and reading has just always been such an important part of my life. My school librarians knew me very well, and all of the librarians in my life kind of made me, informed me as the reader I am today. So being a reader my whole life, obviously books are super important to me. As I became an adult, same thing. I'm reading constantly. I have a little free library in my yard, which, if you don't know what a little free library is, it's basically a community book exchange where it's a little
Sort of like take a penny, leave a penny, but take a book, leave a book.
Exactly. It's a structure where there are books available, and people that are walking around in the neighborhood can come grab one, or if they have one to share. And I love having that in my yard. Some of my favorite things is looking out my window and seeing a family stopping while they're walking the dog and grabbing a book, or a child riding their bike and stopping and grabbing a book. And so people seem to really, really enjoy it. And now there are all kinds of little free libraries in Bellbrook. And when they started putting those up, they actually came to me and asked if I would help kind of mentor the Girl Scouts who maintain the little free libraries. So, you know, it's just, books are part of my life. But the funny thing is I never considered a career that put my love of books in the forefront of my life. It never crossed my mind. So when I started actually subbing in the schools at the end of 2018, I started subbing in the schools. I worked a lot in the preschool building. I worked a lot in Stephen Bell, and I loved sharing books with the children. I've also been a long time participant in Miss Joanne's story times. I would bring my daughter every Wednesday to listen to Miss Joanne read stories. And one day it just kind of clicked. I was listening to Miss Joanne read a story time, and I just thought to myself, you know, there might be something here. So I went, yeah, I think I'm being called to do this. So I actually contacted Miss Joanne and I said, how do I do what you do? I want to, how do I get there? And she kind of took me under her wing, and I started volunteering at the library, kind of job shadowing. And never in my wildest dreams did I think a job would open up, but shortly after, the teen librarian position opened up. And she encouraged me to apply and, you know, go and interview for it. And I thought, there's no way that this is all just going to fall into place. But I'll go, and, you know, maybe they'll remember me for the future. And somehow Sue saw some potential in me and gave me the position, and everything else is history.
I think she likes the name Amanda.
Yes, yes. The teen librarian before me was also Amanda, and it's been very, very big shoes to fill because she was fantastic.
I'm sure you're filling them wonderfully, though. You were so much fun, you know, when I get to interact with you at Game Club. So I bet the teens have a blast.
I really enjoy working with teens. They're so funny and insightful, and they're so excited about what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to connect with teens as long as you get them talking about what they're excited about. So, you know, it's not hard. You know, I love being, you know, a person that can be that safe space where, you know, just talk about, you know, what are their interests? What are they doing? So that's what I just love. I love working. They make me laugh all the time. It's very entertaining. And I tell people all the time, like, I get paid to hang out with and just have a good time. I really do.
I know Board Game Club is definitely that. So I can only imagine what it's like extended to you know, different books and getting to talk to them about their favorites and what is it that makes them their favorite. Yeah, that just sounds like so much fun. Now, I spy with my little eye that you have brought a bucket of favorites. Ooh.
Yes. So I'm not obviously going to have time to talk about all of them, but I thought I would just kind of run through them real quick, kind of what some of my favorites are and why, maybe some buzzwords to see, like, maybe is this the book for you? So I'll start with some YA contemporary.
Okay.
And all these books are geared for teens. So some of them might be geared for a little bit older teens. Some it might not make, you know, might not matter if they're younger. But so one of my favorite YA authors, her name is Elizabeth Acevedo.
Okay.
And she has 3 books. One is called The Poet X. One is called With the Fire on High. And the 3rd book that just came out is called Clap When You Land, but all of the copies were checked out, so I couldn't bring one with me.
Oh, awesome.
Elizabeth Acevedo she writes such beautiful YA contemporaries that are very relevant. They're very emotional. 2 of her books are told in verse, but don't let that scare you. They read like a story. This one is about a young girl in Harlem, and she likes to write slam poetry and perform. And it's about her and her relationship with her mom and parental expectations and first love. And so I love this book. Clap When You Land is about a teenage mother, an aspiring chef. So if cooking is your thing, you will love this book. And Clap When You Land deals with grief and loss and family. And that one's a wonderful book. That book is also told in verse, but they're fabulous and they're quick reads. Another contemporary author you might have heard of is Angie Thomas, who wrote The Hate You Give. You might have heard of it.
They turned that into a movie, right?
They did turn it into a movie. It was a wonderful adaptation. It's The Hate You Give is a wonderful, wonderful book, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. Very relevant, a wonderful book to pick up. This is her 2nd book called On the Come Up. Another fabulous book that deals with race relations and being true to yourself. So this is her 2nd, another fabulous book by Angie Thomas. Far From the Tree is another YA contemporary, and this one follows a group of siblings that have all been given up from adoption and kind of them finding each other, finding their adopted mother. So this all dives into the complexities of adoption.
So the idea of, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but these fell very far, and now they've got to figure out.
Yes, this book will punch you in the feels. So I like to read books that are just very emotional and just rip the heart out of your chest. So
well, that's at least a very honest warning about the preferences.
Speaking of getting your heart ripped out of your chest, let's talk about Mindy McGinnis. So Mindy McGinnis is queen of hard-hitting YA contemporary.
Okay.
If you want something, if your teen wants to read something that is raw and gritty and very relevant, Mindy McGinnis is your author.
Okay.
So The Female, the Species, this book tackles rape culture and sexual assault in teens. And I feel this is very important for teens to read. And it's also just a great book. Very strong female lead character. She's actually a female vigilante. So It's a very interesting book.
It's an odd perspective.
It
to be,
is.
But it makes very good sense for the subject matter.
So highly recommend. Heroin is another book. This deals with the opioid crisis. We kind of watch a female athlete in the grips of addiction. Again, something that I don't think she doesn't sugarcoat it. And I think that's important for teens, not to sugarcoat things.
As my age goes, it sounds a little bit like Basketball Diaries, but from a female perspective.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. A couple more. So here's a couple fantasies that I really, really
Now
like.
we're
If
talking.
fantasy is your thing, if you like atmospheric reads, a great cast of characters, Forbidden Love, The Raven Cycle. The first book is called The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. And the author, she's awesome. I've heard her talk a couple times in person. She's fantastic. And I Darken is a gender swap retelling of Vlad the Impaler.
So a female Vlad.
Yep. It looks, there's a couple fantastical elements, but it's mostly historical fiction.
Okay.
But this is fabulous. If you like political intrigue and very strong female lead and action, pick this up for sure.
Sounds a little like Orson Scott Card's, very political, but more for, with that female lead.
Exactly. I love a strong female lead.
I did too. I still do, but
right.
when I was this age, that was all I read.
Yes. An Ember in the Ashes is another, if you like political intrigue and war, and there's definitely some fantasy elements in here, and romance, of course. An Ember in the Ashes is a great book. And then lastly, in honor of the late John Lewis, I wanted to feature, he actually wrote a graphic novel series.
Oh, I didn't know that.
About the civil rights movement and his, it's like an overview. It's not just about his perspective of the civil rights, but it's a general overview. But I think it's fantastic that he wrote a graphic novel series geared for YA, because this is such a great format to show them that. And the illustrations just kind of enhance the story, and the
helps a little with engaging, especially with like a not necessarily an enthusiastic reader.
Exactly. This would be a great book for a reluctant reader that's interested in history, and very, very important time frame. And like I said, in honor of the late John Lewis, who was laid to rest today. Such an important person in our
make sense of what's happening in current modern day times, as well as what happened in the past. So it's a really neat. There was another one that was talking about internment camps that's very similar.
It's called Internment.
Okay, it wasn't it the Star Trek.
Okay. So there is.
Didn't he do one?
He did write one about his own experience. That is called "They Called Us Enemy," I believe.
Okay.
But there's
the other Amanda mentioned that at one point.
So I haven't read that one. That is on my TBR. But there's another YA book called Internment, and it's set in a futuristic, post-apocalyptic kind of world where all of the Muslim Americans are gathered up and placed into internment camps. So that I read that recently, and that is a very, very gripping book.
It's amazing how books and authors can use fictional settings to discuss and relay so much information, history, current events. As I think when we spoke with Joanne, she was talking about coping with emotions, and how I'm sure there are quite a few young adults, particularly the contemporaries, that discuss those kinds of how do I deal with this? And it's through a fictional lens, but it's amazing what books can do for people, and they sometimes need that advice, but they don't want to be told.
One of my favorite aspects of books is just you can see things through the eyes of people who've lived it. You can develop that empathy that you know, you might not have felt, and gives you a different perspective on, you know, people's thoughts and motivations and where they're coming from. And that's so important, and it's so important for teens in particular to learn that empathy and kind of think, you know, because let's face it, a lot of teens are very self-centered. I mean, you can't blame them. It's the age. Their whole world
is part of their
is
development.
But you know, books and getting them to read books, it helps kind of broaden that view.
Other perspectives. The world is bigger than them. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's amazing. I'm so grateful that you've sort of stepped up to fill in the other Amanda's shoes, and I'm sure hopefully she'll be back too, and we'll get both of you, and it'll be so good for the Winters Library to have all the Amandas back. But in the meantime, we're so happy that you're there and that you're providing these, and I look forward to things kind of settling after COVID and being able to send my teens to you to, you know, help guide them to some books that they might like. So I'm grateful. Thank you for sharing this with us this evening and coming on. And thank you everyone else for joining us this evening. We hope you enjoyed hearing about these young adult books for your own kids, or maybe your neighbor or somebody else that you know that would be interested in this material. And definitely check out Winters Library. And if you have any questions, check out, you know, find a way to get a hold of Amanda. I'm sure she's right there on the website, and you can ask her questions. I'm sure she'd happily talk to you about it. So we hope you'll join us the next time. We've got some very exciting things coming. You have a good night.